Welcome to the White House. Just want to say, my name's Liza Heyman. I work in the Office of Public Engagement, and I have the great honor of running our Champions of Change program. First of all, I want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you for those who are joining us live on the White House website for honoring these inspirational champions of change who are educating our next generation of Americans. We've heard the president say it time and time again. You know, the best ideas, they don't come from Washington, they come from outside Washington. And that's why in 2011, following the State of the Union address, the president said, you know, we have to find a way to lift up people that are making real change at the local level in their communities. And that's why we started the Champions of Change program. And it's been such an honor to meet everyone that's come through this door. These are our real heroes here, and I'm just so excited to hear from you and hear your stories today. So with that note, everyone, please lift up these stories the best you can. Feel free to take photos, use your Instagram, use your Facebook, use our hashtag WHChamps, so that we can just track our day at the end of the day. It's just so fun to hear from you and hear from people in the audience. I would also say we're going to have two great panels, so raise your hands, ask questions, get to know our champions. We're just excited to have this really passionate group with us today. I know this isn't a shy group from what I've heard. And with that, without further ado, I want to introduce my colleague, Jorge Neri. He is Associate Director of the Office of Public Engagement, a great colleague and a great friend. So with that, Jorge.
Good morning, everyone. First off, this wouldn't be possible without Liza. She is truly the person who champions all these events. She's the one that helps organize the building to make sure that we're able to recognize people from all different types of backgrounds, whether it's around education, healthcare, transportation. She's been just doing a tremendous job with this program. So everyone, please give her a round of applause. So I have the great honor of introducing a good friend, someone who's served and been a true champion for education during his time here at the White House, during his time with Senator Kennedy, the late Senator Kennedy, and even with advocacy organizations on the outside. He's been just working for a number of years, fighting for issues that matter to the Latino community and to all communities. So with that, I want to introduce Roberto Rodriguez, the Deputy Assistant to the President for Education with the Domestic Policy Council.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you here. Welcome to the White House. I'm thrilled to join you this morning. I want to thank Jorge and Liza for their leadership here in putting together Champions of Change, and particularly this Champions of Change. We are thrilled to be able to recognize and applaud some of America's finest educators that are helping our Latino students move forward towards success. I want to also just take a moment to recognize and thank our partners here in this great work on this event, as well as on our broader work to promote educational excellence for our Latino community. That's Alejandra Ceja, who's the director of the White House Initiative for Educational Excellence for Latinos, and our Deputy Director, Marco Davis. If we can give them both a round of applause, please. I've known them both for a long time, and we've been great partners and friends in this work. So I want to keep my remarks short here because we're going to launch into two great panels to really further unpack some of the strategies and ideas for helping our Latino community move forward toward educational attainment. I want to underscore, though, first, just how important this agenda is to the president, how important our education work is to the broader work of really creating and supporting an America that is a land of opportunity, where everyone who works hard has a chance to get ahead and really achieve the American dream. Education has been the pillar of that work. It's been the pillar of the American dream, and it has been what, as the president talks about, a ladder of opportunity to really move our country forward, to build a stronger middle class. Education has been that first rung on that ladder of opportunity. Our community has recognized that for many years. It's part of our history, it's part of our culture, it's part of who we are as a Latino community, recognizing the importance of education, supporting our families, supporting our youngest family members as they move forward, and supporting our adults as they continue on to build the knowledge and skills that they'll need to be successful and to really build and move into the middle class in our country. So, the president knows that the success of the Latino community and the success of our endeavor around Latino educational attainment is not just directly tied to opportunity for the Latino community, it is tied to opportunity and the future prosperity of our entire country. Latinos will continue to drive the growth in our labor force moving forward. We will account for 60% of the nation's population growth by 2050. And we know that education is, today more than ever before in our history, the strategy for global competitiveness. As our children compete with the world for the jobs of the future, our security, our economic future is directly tied to education. So that global contest, it begins in our classrooms. It begins with the work that our Latino teachers and our other educators, our principals, our superintendents, our college faculty, our college leadership, our educators in after-school programs, in community-based settings, our adult educators, our Head Start teachers, our preschool teachers. That contest begins with all of them and the work and the relationship that they forge with our Latino community. So, we have good news in that we can celebrate some of the progress that the Latino community has made educationally. For the first time in history, on our nation's college campuses, Latinos now number 17% of the total student body. So with 2 million undergraduates, Latinos are now the largest minority group on our college campuses across the country. We're trying to do our part. The president has put forth robust investments in programs like the Pell Grant to reach over 150,000 Latino students, provide a lifeline of scholarship and opportunity to be able to reach and achieve a college degree. We know that our graduation rates as a country are the highest that they've ever been, at just over 80%. We're moving in the right direction in terms of helping a greater share of our young people earn their high school degree and be able to graduate college and career ready. And we know that our dropout rates have begun to come down. This is an important issue for our Latino community. We've worked for decades, my own career going back to my time in the advocacy community, to really do more to begin to bend that troubling trend around the dropout rate for the Latino community. The dropout rate today for the Latino community is now about half of what it once was. That is something to celebrate. And something to really embark on a conversation about. How do we get there, and how do we continue to make progress to really drive change and innovation in our schools, and to make sure that we have a personalized focus to help each and every one of our young people stay on track to graduation and ensure that they're not falling through the cracks. We still have a ways to go. We have our on-time graduation rate for the Latino community continues to hover around 56, 57%. So we are not going to be a nation that is successful moving forward if we're only graduating on time about half of our Latino students. We have to do much, much better. So we've put forth ideas. The president has put forth a robust plan for a complete and competitive education, beginning with making sure that every single one of our youngest children has access to high-quality early childhood education, great preschool for each and every one of our 4-year-olds, a complete and competitive education from elementary, middle to high school, beginning with a great teacher in every classroom, a national effort, all hands on deck, to begin to turn around some of our lowest performing schools. We know that we have a good portion of our high schools, about 1,400 1,500 high schools that unfortunately have the majority of our dropouts. About 3/4 of our Latino dropouts are traced to these schools. The good news is, with the right reforms, with the right resources in those schools and the support and a full engagement from the community in those schools, we can create a new day for learning for our Latino students and families to help them complete. And we're doing more to make sure that we're sending a strong message to each and every one of our Latino young people that they have a strong pathway and a clear pathway to college. In today's economy, a post-secondary education, whether it's a 2-year degree, a technical degree, a 4-year degree, is critical for moving forward. The President and the First Lady have joined together in this effort, have brought together college presidents, philanthropic partners, others, all with this idea that the First Lady has been wonderful in helping lead in terms of a message to reach higher. And to begin earlier to make sure that we create pathways for all of our Latino young people to be able to reach college and, more importantly, succeed, persist through, and earn their degree. So none of this is possible without partners across the board. And as the President often says, we don't have all of the answers here in Washington. We rely on a robust partnership with local leaders and with our states to make this possible. I am thrilled and excited to hear more today about some leaders in our community who are making a difference in the lives of our Latino young people, are helping them stay on track educationally and helping them begin to assemble the building blocks of what will be the fulfillment of the American dream. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the program over again. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. We're excited to have you, and we're looking forward to a great conversation.
Buenos dias, good morning. Thank you, Roberto, for those inspiring words. The reason we are all here today, as Liza said, is the example of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. And President Obama has often talked about this moment in history being an all-hands-on-deck moment, because single one of us in this country has to give more of ourselves to make this country even more incredible than it already is. So with that, we are here to honor the White House Champions of Change. And I'd like to name them and where they're from and ask them each to stand. And then I'd ask you to hold your applause until all of them have stood and are turned around to face you and face their fan clubs at their various schools and communities across the country. So please join me. Actually, no, excuse me. We're going to hold our applause until we're done. So our first White House Champion of Change is Amelia Castañeda from Alexandria, Virginia. Then we have Susan Cordova from Denver, Colorado. Patricia Cortez Hidalgo from Watsonville, California. Dr. Danielle King from Mission, Texas. Dr. Gonzalo Lacava from Atlanta, Georgia. Leonel Popol from Cheverly, Maryland. Pedro Rivera from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Shanna Runk from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pat Sanchez from Denver, Colorado. And Anibal Soler Jr. from Rochester, New York. Please join me in giving these White House Champions of Change a robust round of applause. You may be seated. Thank you for all you do every single one of day in your communities, not only for the Latino community, but every single child and family in the communities in you live. We couldn't do this hard work without you, and congratulations on being named a Champion of Change.
I'm now going to introduce our first moderator and then bring up our first panel. Eric Waldo is the Executive Director of the First Lady's Reach Higher Initiative, an effort to inspire students to complete education past the high school level, whether at a professional training program, a community college, or a 2 to 4 year college or university. His role cross-cuts policy, advocacy, community engagement to further the President's goal that by 2020, the U.S. will once again lead the world in terms of college graduates. I'd like to welcome Eric Waldo to the stage and our first panel of champions, please.
Thank you, Liza, and welcome again. Let's give another round of applause for our champions. This is such an honor to be able to be here. I'm thrilled to be here on behalf of the First Lady and the Reach Higher campaign. As Liza said, our goal really is to inspire young people across the country to take their education seriously, to complete education past high school, and to commit themselves to completing some form of higher education. Because as we know, if we want to be the most competitive country in terms of our economy, in terms of how we do competitively, we need to be the most educated country. And that means our future relies on people to my left and people in this audience, educators who are focusing on what we're doing to make sure kids across the country are getting the education they deserve and they need. Y también esto es un tema muy importante para mí porque yo soy puertorriqueño, así que eso es un tema que toca mi corazón. And so for the non-Spanish speakers, I'm saying this is also really important to me as a Latino. I'm actually Puerto Rican, and this has been really important to me to work on this issue to see how we elevate the importance of education for our Latino community across our country. So I want to give each of my fellow panelists a chance to introduce themselves, say a little bit about themselves, and then I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then we're going to give you all in the audience a chance to ask us questions, ask them questions about what's the keys to their success and how we're moving the ball forward. So, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Patricio Sanchez. I'm from a small town in southern Colorado, San Luis, Colorado, one of the poorest counties in the U.S., and that's where I started my educational career. Entering my 23rd year, spent a lot of time in inner city schools, turning around struggling middle and high schools, and now I'm fortunate to serve as superintendent of Adams County School District 14. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Pedro Rivera, I'm the superintendent of the School District of Lancaster in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm originally from Philadelphia, born and raised in Philadelphia, worked through the school district there as a teacher up to administrator. Serve a student population of around 11,500 students. Very diverse in a great community, so good morning to everyone.
Well, good morning, and first it's an honor to be named the Latino Educator Champion of Change. And I also want to thank my family in Fulton County Schools for giving me the opportunity to be here. But my name is Gonzalo Lacava. As I said, I'm the area superintendent for the Central Learning Community in Fulton County Schools. And today I oversee about 20,000 students in about 18 schools. So thank you for having me here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Shauna Runk. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Community Relations and Financial Capability at New Mexico Educators Federal Credit Union in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm here to talk about today our work with the Running Start for Careers program, which is a Mayor Governor initiative that we have in Albuquerque to support Latino youth graduate from high school and find employment opportunities in high demand trades. So thank you for allowing me to be here today, and I look forward to sharing our work we're doing in Albuquerque.
Good morning. My name is Daniel King. I'm the superintendent of the FAR San Juan Alamo Independent School District in the very southern tip, what's known as the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. And first I want to thank the whole PSJA team for all the great work that's led to this Champion of Change designation. The FAR San Juan Alamo Independent School District serves over 32,000 students down on the South Texas border, 99% Hispanic, almost 90% economically disadvantaged. And with great team effort, we've made great strides on the work of getting our students to and through high school and college, reducing the dropout rate by over 80% from more than double the state average to less than half the state average, and increasing the on-time graduation rate from 62% to 90% over the last few years.
So again, this is an incredible group of people we have who are obviously taking on the issue of educating Latinos, at-risk youth, and doing it at scale in pretty extraordinary ways. So what would be great is if we, again, go down the line, or folks just want to jump in. And I think this group, I'd personally love to hear what you thought, in your work, what's been that sort of aha moment where you think this is the key to how we're bringing our success to scale in our work in our community? Like, what has really inspired you? You said, yep, that's what we have to do. And if I could wave my wand and have the rest of the country do this, this would make the biggest difference, because it's what we're doing here, and it's where we're seeing our success, and it's why you guys have been invited here.
Start us off. I think it's very interesting when looking for the aha moment, and unfortunately in education, there's someone always looking for the silver bullet or the pill that's going to fix education. And first and foremost, I think if you really want to reflect on one aha moment, it's realizing one really important fact, and that's education's hard work. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't phone it in, you can't just show up, you have to be there and you have to be present. And I think for us, as you know, all of my colleagues up here, actually, I feel like we're the three linemen up here, kind of sitting next to each other fighting for space. So after this, we'll head over to the Redskins and see if they have any openings after this weekend. But you know, I think, you know, fortunately for us, we've been able to, you know, really build a team that's committed to kids, committed to students, show up every day and know that at the end of the day, our job is to improve the quality of life for kids, and we have to stay focused on children. You know, we've been very fortunate and blessed as a school district to also reduce the graduation rate. Increase the graduation rate, reduce the dropout rate, moving, you know, from over 500 students dropping out a year last year to 81. But to have a team that says, you know, 81's still too high. You know, that number has to be 0. You know, to improve the graduation rate to over 80% and still say that 80% graduation rate is still too low. We have to hit 100%. And, you know, so first and foremost, you have to be committed to change, but then also realizing it isn't a magic wand. And there's no silver bullet. There isn't a pill that's going to fix kids. You have to show up, you have to invest the time, you have to invest the resources, and you have to be that change. And, you know, hire folks and select folks and work with folks who believe the same.
Well, good morning. That's a great question. And if I had to wave my magic wand and say what started, you know, to impact academic achievement in my school, prior to this, I was a principal. I had 2 Title I schools. One had 1,300 students. The elementary school had 1,400 students. I worked in elementary and middle school. And when I started to see the teachers start to believe that our Hispanic students or Latino students could actually do it, and when we started to see Latino students coming back to the middle school, that they were leaving because they thought too many suspensions, too many issues going on, too many Latinos, and we started to seeing those students coming back, that's when I started to see this works. And I know why it's working. Now in Fulton County, we're starting to do the same thing. We're starting to change the culture. We're starting to make families and parents believe that we have a great educational system, and we can address any issue of any child. It doesn't have to be Latinos. But in Fulton County, as many of you might not know, Georgia is the 10th fastest growing state in the union as it relates to Latino students. And so we're working really fast, really quickly, putting a lot of strategies in place and making sure that every student feels welcome, that they know that we can do a great job for them. But going back to the aha moment, it has to be that families and parents believe that, and the teachers. Once you hire great teachers, that they also come along with you, and that mind shift that Latino students can learn. So that's the aha moment for me.
I guess for me, being part of turnaround situations, really the aha moment for me is really working on the hearts and minds of the adults. The kids are not the issue. I think that generally speaking, if I were to point to one thing, it would be we need to increase our skillfulness in having a national conversation about race and ending the predictability of kids of color and kids of poverty predictably and performing at low levels. And I think that's really critical, and it means that the adults need to change how they think and how they think about kids, because those thoughts become actions, and those actions play out in a systemic way, and we see kids in a predictable way struggling and failing. So I think that developing some tools and skills for us to be able to talk about those racial disparities is one of the big aha moments that we've had, and I think that's really helped our team, combined with also what I hear about having a highly effective leadership team that really believes that and is willing to do what it takes personally to try to lead that change with other adults. And I think that's the difficult nature of our work.
So I think you heard a lot of interesting answers around culture, leadership, you know, honest dialogue with the community and with the personnel in schools about expectations and about, you know, how to turn things around. Understand that it's a systemic effort and not one simple thing. It's a complex and difficult system. You know, as you heard Roberto and Liza and others say, this is really a unique opportunity for us here in Washington because we want to bring you here. You're being broadcast live to people across the country, and it's critical that we get to hear when we're not leaving Washington enough about what's happening in the field and what you think the federal government can do to be a better player and to help you all be more successful. And I think, you know, I always like to say this in terms of if you could tell the First Lady one thing, if you could tell the President one thing, you know, in terms of your work and what we could do to help you be more successful and your students be more successful, what would that one thing be?
So in Albuquerque, We are really trying to find some innovative, creative, and comprehensive strategies to support Latino youth. And those have to come from multiple entities. It can't be a one organization support. So we have found some really great ideas regarding supporting our youth. We have a mayor who is very innovative, Richard J. Berry, and he's created a program called Running Start for Careers. And this is a collaboration between Albuquerque Public Schools, Central New Mexico Community College, the City of Albuquerque, and industry partners. And these industry partners provide students the opportunity to earn dual credit, so they earn high school credit as well as college credit while they're still in high school. And they have the opportunity to explore careers in very high-need industries. In Albuquerque, almost half of our job force is in industries that require post-secondary education. It may not be a four-year degree, but it does require maybe a certificate or an associate's degree. So those opportunities are being provided to students to both increase graduation as well as explore career opportunities. So when they do graduate, there are employment opportunities for them upon graduation. New Mexico Educators Federal Credit Union, where I work, we are one industry partner in that work, and we provide both educational opportunities. I teach a course called Financial Services Career Exploration, so students learn about the possible employment opportunities in the financial services industry. And then we also have a very robust internship program. So we provide those students with internships in multiple departments within our organization. So I would say, if I could say one thing and make one recommendation, it would be to encourage multiple entities in the community to get together and really find those innovative cross-systems integrated supports to help all of our students.
Yes. Kind of tying the two questions together on the first question, it takes commitment, it takes innovation, and really to do the work thoroughly, it takes systemic change. And one of the other things I think is that I'm a firm believer that we already, in a lot of ways, we know what works, and we see the examples out there of what works, and it's the importance of scaling and replicating the things that work. And some of the things that we've done in our district, very innovative, some of them are very fundamental. Students also need that personal connection, and both the students and the teachers need to see our students in those conditions of success. And so some of the things we've done, some of them are very basic. My colleague, I believe it was Pedro, mentioned about 0 being the right number of dropouts. In our community, we have an initiative that's been ongoing since 2007. We call it Countdown to 0. And every fall, we go out basically doing detective work, trying to track down every single missing student. And we've brought the number of dropouts down from around the 500 range to 60 last year, and had a huge decrease in that. And every Saturday in September, we have 300 or so volunteers from our faculty, from the community, that volunteer to go out and then do this work, and then we have it ongoing during the year. We opened in 2007 an innovative high school for 18 to 26-year-olds, dual enrollment for 18 to 26-year-old dropouts and non-completers. Since 2007, we've graduated over 1,300 18 to 26-year-old, basically almost 100% Latino students. Some of them have gone on to get 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees, certificates. Larger numbers of those have completed at least their high school diploma. The other thing that we've been focusing on is really scaling dual enrollment, scaling early college high school. We have kind of an early college for all model. We have almost 9,000 or over 8,500 high school students. We're trying to systemically restructure our system and connect so that we create pathways to and through high school and college. This semester we have over 3,000 high school students taking college classes. Last year we had several hundred of our students cross the college stage before they receive their high school diploma. Our goal in the next few years is to get to the point where close to half of our students will earn either an associate degree or a certificate at community college by graduation day, and over 90%, we want them to have over 90% have started college. This past year's graduating class, Well over half, between 55 and 60% of our high school graduates last year had started college before high school graduation. So we've seen that works. For our young people, connecting them early, getting them an opportunity for success in that, getting our young people to see the meaning of school by focusing on, it's amazing when high school students get a college major and start working on a college degree, how it completely transforms high school from maybe being a rite of passage for many students to be something that they really dedicate themselves to, because they tie it directly to what they want to do and what they want to be. And I do have to mention, I guess Stephanie Mendez is in here. I just bumped into her, and she's a White House intern. I didn't even know she was here. She graduated from one of our high schools 3 years ago. And Stephanie, stand up, please. Stephanie graduated from PSJ Memorial High School, and she was just telling me that she's been wanting to get my email to write me a letter because she started college as a junior, and because she got two years complete in high school. And that's what we're trying to do more and more for our students. It makes college affordable. We do need, when you're going back to the second question, we do need assistance in all the different issues. It's very complicated in terms of scaling early college and dual enrollment strategies, the way that in different issues related to FAFSA and all kinds of issues related to that.
I think if there's one recommendation I would make to President Barack Obama is to continue to push his initiative that he came up with in January, that call to action for more low-income students to attend college. In Georgia today, only 6% of our high school graduates are attending a four-year college. And from that, only 60% of them are graduating. So it's very important to continue to push our higher education institutions to help our students to attend college, and also to make a connection. Sometimes I think our Latino students don't have that connection on why I need to take the next step. So we need to do a better job advocating for our low-income Latino students as well.
I won't take advantage of this opportunity and ask for greater education funding.
That's assumed.
That's assumed.
Or I thought you might ask for if the president would speak at commencement. Yeah, that's the other ask.
We'll email that in. However, we know as leaders, one of the greatest things and opportunities we have is to set conditions. So for us in our districts and our organizations, we set conditions in which others can work and become successful and find success. So I think, from the president and, the First Lady's position, to set conditions in which the rest of the world can understand that educators are needed, educators are important, educators are the individuals that are in front of kids each and every day, creating and setting a nurturing environment and culture. And I think what's happened over the course of the past 20 years, we've seen this shift of how educators are viewed, both in the media and in the public. And if I could say anything, use the influence, set conditions in which educators are treated and respected in the way that they should. And they should be respected as individuals, as nurturers, as caring adults that impact the life of our kids. So if we can do anything and it show that at least good educators, great educators, show them that they're appreciated. Show the world that we need more great, bright, distinguished educators in the field, and we need to continue to build a focus on kids in the U.S.
So, I think we're hearing some great answers. You're hearing the terrific success stories. You're also hearing a lot of what we talk about in terms of the opportunity for the White House to use our unique bully pulpit to talk and elevate the profession of education. You see so often what's happening in other countries, the way they recruit educators, talk about education in terms of a profession is different than how we do here. And certainly the administration's been trying to use their power to do that and do that more. And you're seeing people on the ground who are really fighting this fight every single day. I did want to give folks a chance. We have such a terrific audience here as well. And we'd be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to ask questions of this really terrific panel. So I always warn people in advance, I'm a recovering attorney. I will cold call people if we don't get any questions. Sir. And if you don't mind identifying who you are, where you're from.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Frank Milavan. I am Director of Collective Impact in the Office of the Mayor in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so one of my questions, you talked a little bit about family engagement, parental engagement. So can you describe some of the things that you do to engage parents, families in culturally relevant ways? So what I'm getting at with this question is, how do you get to the point where parents and families are not consumers of education, but contributors to the overall vision of what you're trying to accomplish in your schools and school districts?
I just want to make sure, I'm going to say this on the microphone just so folks who are following online make sure they heard. The question was really about what's the key that these folks do in terms of creating really robust family engagement opportunities that are culturally relevant to engage the Latino community and to be successful. So open question. Do you want to?
Well, I would say, knowing that Latinos come from a tribal system, I think honor, loyalty, and respect with love is kind of the framework you want to come from. In our district, I'll give you two examples. One is I facilitate a Spanish-speaking parent group myself with no filters once a month. We have breakfast together. Food helps. Daycare helps.
Yes.
And having a place for parents to come during the day and make them feel welcome and honored is critical. We facilitate a district advisory committee. When we started, we had maybe 20 parents. Now we ebb and flow between 100 to 200 parents every month. We have food. The first hour is spent in their school groups, talking with their principal about any school issue. Then we come together, we have a meal together, and we talk about what are district issues and what's going on. So I think really I think the element that I would say is really behind that is this idea that we treat our community and our kids as we want them to be and as we believe they should be. So we treat them as if they're highly intelligent individuals, and that has had profound impact on how they respond. And I think that they're starting to really take ownership of our schools and their schools. And I think those have been really simple ways for us to remove those barriers, albeit many times it's language, but I think that's been the approach matters.
In Albuquerque, we partner with several different organizations as a cooperative, New Mexico Educators Federal Credit Union. We work with school systems, for-profits, nonprofits to provide financial capability education. One program that we collaborate with is with Albuquerque Public Schools. The program is Parent University, and we provide financial capability education and training for families. Again, we have the daycare, and we provide dinner for families, and those workshops are ongoing. So it's a multiple tiered system, and they're provided in both English and Spanish to support the bilingual families and their students, because we know if parents are financially and economically stable and have economic mobility, then it increases the opportunities for their children as well. So thank you.
You know, just to share a personal story, my mom and my dad weren't SAC members. They didn't come to PTA meetings. It's not because they didn't want to. It's because they worked. They worked from 7 in the morning to 7 at night. High school degree. They don't have higher education. So when I became a principal of a large Title I comprehensive school, I started to ask myself, why are my parents coming? And the answers were pretty simple, I guess. And it was that they're not coming because we don't have an agenda that's impactful. Just to discuss business. People are not going to take 30 minutes, 45 minutes out of their job just to come and hear us talk about PTA money. So we created a parent university within our school, and we taught parents how to teach their kids reading, how to work in math. And we started to see an elevation of parents coming. Yes, we fed them, but really what it was, parents wanted to be involved, but they didn't know how to. So we started to put those things in place, and at the end, they actually graduated from our parent university. They actually received an award, and they were very proud about that. And that's what started to bring that culture, our parents back to the school. They said, you know what, I can teach reading. I might not do it at the highest level, but at least they can do something. They can teach, they can teach fluency. They can help with something. So that's what we did at the past middle school, and I truly believe that was one of the reasons that we were able to move so many of our lowest 25% of our kids, because we saw parents coming and working with their own kids, and kids started to take, they started to feel good about that. My mom can do something for me. So that's one of the ways that I, as a principal, put together a parent university to see our parents come back to the school and give back to the school.
Other questions from the audience, ma'am? So we have a direct question. Just again for folks at home, the question was about directed to Mr. Sanchez about how do you change hearts and minds of educators if they really seem to be steadfastly set in an unhealthy mindset?
Well, I think first and foremost, it is hard work. When we talked about hard work, that was kind of a good example. Whenever I would interview principals or interview teachers, and I typically will ask the question, are you here to serve or are you here to save? I think that kind of starts sorting the philosophy of what people are looking for. And I think when you interview and you look for folks, you want to have their answer, not your answer. So you really have to try to create scenarios where you really get at the root of what do they really believe about kids of color and kids of poverty. Another way that we've had success is just putting them around kids. I think the way you interact with students and the way that you talk with adults and the way you talk to parents, those things start surfacing your belief system. Because if you look at the brain research, beliefs drive behavior, behavior drives expectations, and you really got to start looking at how do you create scenarios where you're really surfacing what the candidate believes and not what you want to hear. But it also shows up in other ways. But I think what I would tell you is you have to be willing to take it on, and you have to be willing to ask questions of candidates that are going to make them reflect. Questions like, why are you really here to work in this school, in this inner city community? What do you hope to attain from being here? What do you bring to the table? And I think when in that answer you listen for, are they serving or are they saving? I could tell you, working in largely Latino population schools, a lot of people want to come in and do really great things for those brown kids, and it comes off so offensive. And what I will tell you that you can't get away with is that in collective culture, our kids have a very high EQ, and they can pick up in 2 seconds if you're real or if you're not real. So I appreciate the question.
I think, I think, part of it also is, of course, you take it on in terms of, verbally and in terms of the messaging you're giving. But at the same time, you can't wait until you convince everybody. You've got to begin the work. You've got to target and get, key things going. So in Far San Juan Alamo ISD, when we opened dual enrollment high school for 18 to 26-year-olds, there were some, in the community, and even some, on staff that questioned and criticized. There were some that said, you're rewarding dropouts. There were some that said, well, so you're sending a message, the best way to get to college is drop out. And so there were some that said you're going to, in fact, that said you're going to increase the dropout rate. Well, clearly that hasn't happened. So, keeping the focus and keep on going. So my response was, what we're doing here should be what we're doing in all of our high schools. So then we met with the high school principals, and when we opened that high school in September of 2007, had the first graduation in December with, not a lot, 40 or 50 graduates initially in that first semester, and big community celebration because this was a community that was really getting hit. Every high school had come out in a report on the dropout factory list and so forth, and like I said, that's been completely turned around. But brought in the high school principals and said, okay, what can we learn from what's going on here? And so this is what I'm talking about when I talk about scaling. So if we have effective practices, too often we do things in isolation. So we open an alternative school or a dropout recovery school, and we run that school, but the rest of the system keeps on doing what it was doing. Well, if what that school is working for these kids, how do we then use that as a laboratory and bring those practices back into the regular high schools and use them in a preventative mode instead of afterwards? If you have got an early college high school in your district and the few hundred kids that go over there, it's great, Well, why run that in isolation and let the rest of your system just keep on doing what it's doing? So that goes back to what I'm talking about, that there's the things out there that work, but we're not learning from them always and scaling them and bringing them so that we make systemic change instead of having a little boutique over here that's doing some great things for a few kids and the rest of the system keeps on doing what it was doing before.
So I think we have time for one more question in the back.
My name is Jonathan Avila, East
So just again, for folks watching online, the question was about, the questioner is a current college student talking about how do K-12, has the K-12 system, I'm going to slightly modify, has the K-12 system continue to support students once they've left your system, especially our at-risk minority kids who maybe had a certain set of supports when they were in high school and then get to this separate network and they maybe don't have those robust supports. How are you guys continuing to make your goal college completion and not just high school completion?
And I think that's a question that every K-12 institution is struggling right now because, first of all, we don't have enough counselors in the school system. That's one thing that we're working very, very diligently in Fulton County is to put more counselors in the schools to make sure that we're having those conversations about kids. But I also think it's a partnership between K-12 and higher education because I truly feel that there's 2 points I want to make on this. Number one, I think when Latino students are applying for college, both the counselor and the I guess the advocate in higher education need to sit down and really look at where the Latino student will be successful at. You know, just not letting them go into a university without any support or any help, really helping them to look for the right university for them. And then number two, the second point is I think higher ed, in collaboration with K-12, we need to do a little better job when they get to school. Provide support from when they're a freshman all the way till when they get to their senior year, you know, in testing, taking the right courses, making sure if they're passing a course, can they take a higher level course, or if they're about to fail, how can we remediate? I think sometimes from personal experience, you know, I think I saw my counselor once in my high school, and I never saw a counselor in college. I took it upon myself to do it all, and thank God that God gave me that initiative, internal initiative to, you know, take the right classes, you know, whatever that's called. But if it wasn't for something ingrained, I don't know if it would have taken me 6, 7, 8 years. And that's what I think we need. We need more partnerships with K-12 and higher institutions. And I think we need to provide better support once they get to college to see them through the 4 years so they can graduate.
So those partnerships between colleges and high schools are the key. And, you know, most students in the country do go local. What we've done is 2 things. One, for the students that go local, we have 2 great partners, South Texas College in McAllen and University of Texas Pan American in Edinburgh. What we've done is 2 things. One, South Texas College has trained our counselors as college advisors through their college advisement system because so many of our students start college early. Second of all, we have counselors that we pay that are housed, and the university and the college give us an office. And we have full-time transition counselors, and their job is to support these students their first year in college because they are used to that support and help them until the college advisement system kicks in. So they help them get through all the loops of getting in the seat because that is not easy for first-time college goers. So they help them through all the paperwork and red tape of getting in the seat. They're there for supports during the first year until they're successfully in the second year. And then we're currently setting up a network of virtual support that actually one of our graduates that's at Princeton University did as a service project in helping us set up a nationwide virtual support for our students that go out to universities all over the country so that we have a way to provide that support.
And quickly, I'll share, this is where the term education becomes really multifaceted in the sense, we realize first we have to educate parents that college is attainable and that their children can not only be prepared to go to college, but you can afford college. We notice through parent conversation that as early as 3rd grade, parents start to believe they can't afford to send their kids to college. So first, we have to really dispel that myth and you know, just educate parents around that we can help them, we can support them, we can help them find ways to get into college. Second, we have to create a curriculum that's preparing students to go to college. We have to ensure that the college levels, the courses that they're taking in high school and well before high school is preparing them to become successful in college. Lastly, we have to educate, we have to expose students to college. I mean, we realize we started middle school sending kids to colleges to start to expose themselves to that college culture. You can't wait till a kid's in the 11th grade and then say, hey, here's what a college looks like. Way too late. We also have to expose colleges to our high school campuses because we have to understand that both our university partners and our K-12 partners can't work in vacuums, and there has to be a symbiotic relationship in which they understand they benefit from their partnership with us and we benefit with our partnership to them.
Well, listen, this has been a terrific conversation. Let's give this first panel a round of applause.